Today's lesson is on solving quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula. Okay, it is SOL A.14. Okay, the quadratic formula, please write it down on your paper, is x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. Now you'll note that we get the a, b, and c from the standard form of a quadratic equation. You should recognize this. So as you see, the coefficient of the x squared is the a, and that's 1 in this case. B is 4, and c is 4. So now we're going to go ahead and just plug it into the formula. In this particular case, because we started off with a perfect square trinomial, we have zero under the discriminant, which means we're only going to end up with one answer. And you'll see how we get two answers on the next problem. Because negative 4 plus or minus 0 is not going to make any difference. Your final answer will be negative 2. So since this is a perfect square trinomial, it only has one solution, and the x is equal to negative 2. On our next problem, we're going to go ahead and figure out a, b, and c. And we're going to plug it into the quadratic formula again. Again, write it down, please. X equals negative b plus or minus, very important, the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now in this case, we end up with a perfect square under the radical. So that's going to be a 7. The square root of 49 is 7. And now you'll see how you get the two answers. So my two answers here are negative 1/2, because negative 5 plus 7 is positive 2, and 2 divided by negative 4 is negative 1/2. And negative 5 minus 7 divided by negative 4 is going to be negative 12 divided by negative 4, which is a positive 3. So my solution set for this quadratic equation is negative 1/2 and positive 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do the first problem on this one, and then I want you to do the rest of them and bring them in and show me. So here we have A, B, and C again. Okay, and this one also ends up giving us whole number roots. Many times you will end up with decimals because your square root is not a perfect square. But in the examples we've done so far, it is. Let's talk a little bit about the discriminant. The discriminant is the expression underneath the radical. So it's b squared minus 4ac, the square root of b squared minus 4ac. So I want to make sure you understand is that the discriminant tells us things. And what the discriminant tells us is how many answers, how many solutions there's going to be. So when I go ahead and start with the first example here and plug it in and solve what's on the discriminant, I know immediately whether there will be one answer, two answers, or no solution. So on my first example, I end up with the discriminant being a negative 240. Well, at this stage of the game, we do not know how to take negative square roots. Therefore, this ends up being a no solution. So your rule of thumb is if the discriminant is negative, then you end up with a no solution. If what's under the radical sign is negative, you have a no solution problem. So here on this one, you have a perfect square trinomial, and what you end up with under the discriminant, and that's the only part I showed you, was the fact that you end up with 0. And here you have one root, or one solution, as a solution to this problem. So here you see we ended up with a non-perfect square under the radical. We take the square root of 244, and it's 15.6. So my two answers, and I'm not going to finish them because I'm running out of room, is negative 10 plus 15.6 divided by 6, and negative 10 minus 15.6 divided by 6. So I'll definitely end up with two solutions. So to sum it up, um, If you have a negative number under the radical sign in the discriminant, you have a no solution. If you have a 0 under the radical sign in the discriminant, you have one root. You have one solution. And if you have a positive number under the radical sign, you're going to end up with 2 roots, whether it's a whole number or whether it's a decimal. Okay, so make sure you understand also that when they ask you to solve these types of equations, there's 4 different ways they can ask you to give an answer. And there's 4 things that it's called. It is called roots, x-intercepts, zeros of the function, and solutions. All 4 things mean the same thing, but you do need to know all the vocabulary. Thank you. Make sure you bring in the other classes, the other problems to show me.